Oh, look, it's OBS. This can get out of here. Uh, as some of you may know, I engage in the Five Night quite regularly. I Faz the Bear quite often. And so I want to talk about, and I'm also really into, old computery stuff. So, there's a FNAF website that's sort of supposed to mimic an older website from the mid-late 90s. And I wanted to talk about the site is good in some ways, it's bad in other ways, and I want to talk about what ways that is. Okay, so first up, these GIFs and everything around here, this is absolutely spot on. This, like, annoying background. I want to zoom in on this image for a bit as well. It's very low resolution, very, like, obviously, and you can see they've taken black boxes and put text on top of them. Only critique here is that if this was done with an older version of MS Paint or something, as it probably was, it would not have text smoothing. Uh, this is, obviously very much spot on. Little thing here, which says originally Freddy Fazbear's Menu. This would very likely be a GIF or an image of some sort instead of actual text. Um, again, these GIFs are spot on. These GIFs are great. This image would probably be lower resolution. Uh, this is, by the way, this would very likely just be a MIDI playing constantly instead of having a button to turn it on and off. It does sort of sound like a MIDI. I can't tell if it's MIDI or not, but normally they'd have a MIDI playing just constantly in the background instead of like an actual toggle like this. There was not really enough accommodation for that back in the day, browser wise. Right. So my main critique is this. Inclusion of the video, very nice, very good, very cool. However, this is very much meant to mimic an old video player plugin of some kind. It's
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria.
shut up.
The genius who created Fazbear Entertainment opened Freddy Fazbear's.
So, it's very clearly, meant to mimic an older video player. I've got a few critiques here. One is that, I mean, the VHS effect looks good. It looks like, an old VHS. Don't get the static. That's weird. That's not something I understand unless the tape is, like, damaged or salvaged or something. But one interesting thing I have to notice, if you notice the aspect ratio of the video, it's not 4:3. It's like something else weird. And I don't really get why that is. Because if it was a VHS, it's gonna very likely be 4:3. But yeah, really my main critique here is the way they've done this. If, if this was an actual site in the 90s, they wouldn't have had, like, the video player inline, because that wasn't really a thing. There was no real way, there was no such thing as, like, a real inline video player. So they'd probably just have a link to, like, an AVI or a WMV that you could just download and then play on your computer instead of having an inline HTML5, very clearly reliant on HTML5 video player. Um, this is good. This is, less good down here. Maybe don't do that if you want it to be in universe. Again, Snapchat, very weird. This is not a working guest counter, and in fact, it's not. It doesn't seem to be an image either. It's like some SVG bullshit, which would not have been tolerated back in ye olden days. This link just goes to the page for the actual movie. And I honestly don't understand why, because like either this number is important and you've got to like put it in on another site somewhere or something, and it's like a proper ARG, or they're just lazy and didn't want to program like an actual working guest counter. And I mean, it's not that hard to program an actual working guest counter. Hell, you can download an actual working guest counter that it's just like PHP based and would work with like literally any browser ever to exist ever from like any website. You can just search for like free guest counter PHP download and it gives you a fuck ton of them. So I don't understand why they've gone with this in particular. Also, now I want to actually look at the source code of the page. We're going to see what's going on here. So first up, this is not anything that would have existed. You know, again, this is okay, so this is an MP3, which is not anything that things would have. We've got a lot of divs. What I'm noticing is there's a lot of CSS to move things around, but no actual table. There aren't any. There aren't any. There aren't any tables to organize stuff. Is if you would have gone, if you would have had a site actually back in the 90s, all of the like positioning of elements and stuff would have been done with tables. It would have been just entirely tables. I also find it lazy that they've just made the theme color white. But yeah, so like half of this is not even going to be, you know, we might have a look at if we actually inspect what's going on here. Like I do like the compression on this image. That's nice. So for instance, this is like not anything that like this makes sense. This makes sense. These being separate, P, they usually have a BR in them. But yeah, so this is all very new. It's all very, not something that would have flown in browsers back in the day. And if you want proof of that, I've got Netscape 6, which is a browser from around 2000 up, with the same site, and I want to talk about. Obviously, you can see there are a lot of things wrong here. For one thing, none of the images are loading. I don't know why that is. I don't know what's happened there, but none of these are actual, like, images. Like, I can't right-click and, like, save as on any of this stuff, which is weird, because that either means there's some sort of, like if I inspect element here, if I like, right-click, and I inspect, and then I go over to this. This is a div that is, for some reason, this is not an image tag. And this is all with like CSS or God knows what. Again, and that's why none of the images are loading. Like, I feel like at least the images would have worked. So there's a few things that I want to go over. Obviously, none of the stuff's formatted correctly because they didn't use tables. I'm surprised this video player is loading at all. Um, you know, obviously not loading very well. This is the one image on the page that works. Everything else is just completely and utterly non-existent. I also believe that this player that they used here, I'm gonna have a look at it. this is all, I believe, I'm not sure, but I think this is actually from something. Let me see if I can find it. Uh, it was sort of, God, what was it? Here we go, 98.css, here it was. And I think this uses this thing's built-in video player, or it uses something, because I'm almost positive that this is not their own video player. I am almost certain that I have seen this before somewhere. Uh, so again, not a very good site. I'm gonna shut our recording off now.